I remember the moment that I decided I'd had enough. I remember phoning up their call centre whilst I was working at school, and I spent more time on the phone trying to call up their call centre than I was actually teaching. Hopefully their teacher isn't listening.
This is Kwejo Tweneboa, who'd been forced to fight Europe's biggest housing provider, Clarion, to take over the tenancy following his father's death, just to stay in the battered, rodent-infested flat on the Eastfields estate in South London.
I had booked in repairs with them. I was told they're gonna come out. This was after them cancelling several times before. They will be there tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. comes, no one shows up. And I phone around break time, phone Clarion's call centre. There was a guy on the other end of the phone, completely dismissive. And he actually said, we're really busy. No one's available. No one's coming out at the moment, and hung the phone up on me. So I decided after that call to walk over to the house, walk around the house, film the conditions, take pictures. By the time break had finished, I'd gone back over, uploaded it to social media. So this for me is the most shocking part of the house. I shouldn't be in here, but I'm coming in here anyway. And I explain why I shouldn't be in here. This here is suspected asbestos. Now this ceiling collapsed more than a year ago, and dust has been left absolutely everywhere. And within about an hour, I had to go to the head teacher's office and say, like, I've done this and it's pretty much blowing up on social media. I need to make you aware. I don't know if I'm in trouble. I hope not. And they were completely supportive, and they were horrified of the conditions that we were in.
Kwejo's videos were all over social media, and a local newspaper asked him to write an article. Unsurprisingly, what he wrote put Clarion in a particularly poor light. The paper contacted Clarion for comment, what journalists call a right to reply.
And in that right to reply, there was a sentence in there, and it was something along the lines, bearing in mind this is after they knew that my dad had passed away, we're sorry that Kwejo feels as though him and his family haven't received the service that they deserved. And that was it for me. That was when I said to myself, it was me versus Clarion. It was me versus that chief executive. It was me versus my housing officer. I said, I'm going to every single home on my estate after work, met the Residents Association. The school allowed me to print loads of letters that I had written up. We put it through their doors. By the time I had done a lap of 400 odd homes, people were ringing off my phone, people were messaging me, sending me WhatsApp, sending me videos, pictures. I cannot tell you, and that didn't stop for so long. This ceiling caved in and collapsed during the night about 2 nights ago.
So I was here cooking, then film it hit here, hit on that.
And now you're in a cast.
Yes, here.
That's when I went back to Twitter and said, this is what Clarion said in response. This isn't just happening to me, it's happening to my whole estate. That's when I was first introduced to ITV.
I feel just neglected. I just don't even feel like I'm human.
Have you told them about the problems in here?
I told them, so they don't care.
I have nowhere to go. I can't believe that this is happening.
I think it's disgusting.
You're not seriously saying the government have nothing to do with this?
Told them! I told them!
I want to see those homes built that the people of this country desperately need.
I don't want to be living in these conditions.
Episode 3. Sorry, but... If I'm being honest, by this point, Kwejo's email didn't really stand out as the worst we'd seen, because we'd seen so much squalor and disrepair by this point. Kwejo's felt like it was just part of a wider story.
Yeah, we had our team set up. We had Sarah O'Connell, who'd got the original tip-off about Francois's flat in Croydon, and Sophie Alexander, who were our producers, who were going out, doing visits, every day, talking to people. And Kwejo's email had come in, and Sarah had also messaged me and said, a friend of mine sent me this young guy's tweet, which was about the Eastfields estate. And I was like, oh yeah, we've actually had an email from him. And so she said, I'll go down and meet him. And what was kind of such a standout once she'd actually spoken to him and then fed back to us was how he'd kind of been speaking to so many different residents at Eastfields. And we learned how huge the scale of the problem was there.
So off we went with our cameras to begin knocking on more front doors. And behind every single one of them, we found squalor stretching back years.
And the mouse come from this hole.
What, the mouse come through here?
Yeah.
So is this cement?
Yeah, it's a cement.
Did you do this?
Yeah, I do it.
We film inside Janet's flat. She's working 2 jobs to pay for a crumbling property that is falling apart.
What is that?
It's a hole.
Janet peels away a big sheet of cardboard she's gaffer taped to the kitchen wall.
Why is there a hole there?
I don't know. When I came, it was here.
So it's been like that for 27 years?
Yes.
Have you told them about the problems in here?
I told them. So they don't care.
27 years. Janet had gone almost 3 decades without anyone doing the most basic repair. We knock on another door. Fellow resident Juliet and her husband are working 3 jobs between them to afford the £1,300 a month rent on the Clarion house they live in with their 3 children. A black plastic sheet hangs above my head in one of the rooms. Juliet pulls it away like a magician revealing some wonder.
This is where the hole is.
Oh, wow.
That's how he left it.
It is a giant hole in the ceiling, more than a metre wide. The small leak Juliet had reported 3 years ago went ignored, and then one afternoon the ceiling caved in, inches from where her son was doing his schoolwork.
Imagine having your child sitting there under a roof and it just dropped. And my children, the little one came, Mommy, the roof has come down.
Do you worry about their safety when you're not here?
Every day.
The lights have all been cut off. Upstairs, sitting on his bed in the dark, her son Chris tells me,
my mum keep on calling them and they're not like messaging or calling.
Then I meet Christopher and Maria, the oldest residents on the estate. They've been paying Clarion rent for decades in an unfit flat that is falling apart.
They're not seem all that bothered about getting repairs and jobs done. They don't seem to care about the tenants, as long as they get the rent money every month.
The Clarion, who obviously run the place here, their chief executive earns £350,000 a year. That's her salary.
What for? Well, get her to live in these places and see how she likes it.
Not being nasty, what are they doing for that money? What are they doing?
It was a fair question to ask. After returning from one of our many trips to the Eastfields estate, I remember just Googling Clarion and then looking at their financial accounts and having a bit of a dig around into this company. If I'm being really honest, I'd never heard of Clarion before. And it turns out they are very different to the housing providers we'd been dealing with up until this point. I looked at their turnover for 2021 and it turned over £1 billion, £1 billion in the year that we were visiting Eastfields every day.
Yeah, it was totally different to when we've been looking at councils struck by austerity. They've got no money in the pot to carry out repairs, not excusing obviously the terrible conditions that people are living in, but you can understand the financial background. But this was our first foray into the world of mega housing associations and just how much money they brought in. And so it was like, what are they doing with this money if they're not putting it back into the estate? And I remember we found out, they'd been promising for years and years to just totally regenerate Eastfields, to kind of, tear it down, rebuild something. But that just had not happened.
This was the biggest housing association in Europe, and they'd left this entire estate of more than 500 homes to rot. It was failure, disrepair on an industrial scale. And once again, it was time for the nation to see what was happening. Among the millions watching ITV that night was Kwadwo Twenoboa.
I remember my hairs all stood up and I felt a weight sort of lift off of my shoulders, and I thought there was no other way they could possibly be shamed and disgraced as much as they were when that broke as a top story on ITV News.
Ever since we started our investigation into housing conditions, 2 things have been clear. Many people live in appalling conditions, and in very many cases, those who are supposed to care just don't. Daniel has now spent 2 weeks on the Eastfields estate in South London, where the conditions are frankly disgusting.
Hundreds of people working hard, paying their rent, had been left to rot on an estate abandoned by £1 billion company. They deserved answers, and it was my job to get them. And a right to reply wouldn't be enough this time. Clarion agreed to an interview. And all I'm thinking, how on earth are they going to defend or even explain this? Do you want me to move this? The minutes before a difficult interview are odd. It's all very British.
I'm training for the London Marathon. My legs are so sore all the time.
The camera operators are doing their final checks on sound and lighting, so I'm sitting opposite the person I'm interviewing, making small talk about marathons.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's fourth one. So, yeah. It doesn't look like I've done 4 marathons. I've put weight after everyone.
Opposite me, in an office space in central London, was not Clarion's chief executive with the biggest salary, Claire Miller, but their director of housing, Vicky Bonner.
I did running as a teenager, not anything.
Yeah.
My knees are shot.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh.
These are the bits you don't usually hear, for good reason. It's the banal chit-chat. I actually find this bit a lot more awkward than the next bit, the bit where I get to ask my questions and find out what the representative Clarion has sent along has to say about the mass failure we have found.
Can you hear me okay, yeah? Good to go? Happy to go. Why have so many Clarion tenants been left to live in Eastfields in such squalor for so many years?
Getting the balance right between how much you spend in the short and the long term on an estate that ultimately has come to the end of its life is difficult. I'm absolutely clear that we have not got the balance right on the Eastfields estate, and I'd like to apologise on behalf of Clarion to all of those residents. We're determined to put that right, and we're going to be knocking on each and every one of those nearly 500 doors, talking to each of our residents, finding out what their issues are and putting them right.
Why are you only doing that now? Why weren't you doing that before?
We have been talking to residents, and we will continue to talk to residents, but it's clear that there's a bigger issue here.
Could you live in a home for 8 months with no lights on upstairs, no lights in the bathroom, no lights in your bedroom, no lights in the children's bedroom, with a hole in the ceiling?
No, I couldn't, and I am really sorry that any Clarion resident has been put in that position.
Could you cook a meal in a kitchen night after night for your family where mice come in and out every single day, year after year?
No, I couldn't.
So
and I am so sorry.
Why are you expecting Clarion tenants to do that then?
I couldn't, and I am so sorry that we have put residents in that position.
Are you ashamed?
I am very sorry about the service that we have provided. It has not been good enough.
When was the last time you went into a property in Eastfields?
So I haven't been to Eastfields for, over the last year because of the pandemic. So
well, you're here today. You're in a room with me today.
I'm here today, and I am going to be.
Surely your tenants are your priority here.
We've continued to deliver the repairs service during the pandemic, and my teams have continued to be out on those estates, doing walkabouts with the residents and talking to the residents.
Can I tell you what tenants think? Tenants think that you think they aren't important, that they complain for weeks, they complain for months, they complain for years, and nothing really gets fixed. Then we turn up and we contact you, and suddenly there's more people on the estate, there's more resource going in, things start to get fixed. And they look at that and they think, oh no, we were right, we don't matter to them. They're right, aren't they?
Our residents are incredibly important to us. It's very clear that on this estate, we haven't got the balance right between what you invest in the short and long term for an estate which has reached the end of its life and is regenerating.
When you talk about finding the balance between what to spend and what not to spend, you're an organisation that's turning over nearly £1 billion a year, paying your CEO almost treble what the Prime Minister earns. So if it's not a money issue, which it clearly isn't, it's a culture issue, isn't it? It's a caring about people issue.
So for me, so the issue, we don't make profits. We have surpluses. We don't pay dividends to investors. Every penny of our surplus goes into maintaining homes, but also building new homes for those residents that have failed by the market. And we are determined to use our surpluses to do that.
We have complaints about Clarion every single week. There are Facebook groups dedicated. There was a protest outside your office 2 weeks ago of tenants upset with their treatment by Clarion beyond Eastfields. This is not just a problem with Eastfields, is it? There are problems in your organisation across the country.
I would be the first to say that we don't always get everything right. We actually carry out satisfaction surveys of our residents, and in terms of the repairs service, and in general, our residents are satisfied with the service that we provide. I am really sorry that the Eastfield residents have received a service from us which has not been as good as we would like, and we are determined to put that right.
You accept that there are problems beyond Eastfields, don't you?
I accept that there will be some residents who will not be satisfied with the service that Clarion has given them. We are a learning organisation and an organisation that is determined to always do better.
Okay. I'm happy with that. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Are you happy, Andy? So you're walking around quite a lot.
Interview over, and so is the small talk. As you can hear, there's no response.
Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of questions in there, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Again, no response. Vicky Bonner walks out of the room, followed by Clarion's press officer, and according to the WhatsApp group of Eastfield's residents we've been invited in, heads straight to their estate to finally meet with them. She was not complimentary of me. Perhaps it was my boring marathon chat. For Kwadwo Tweneboa, it was the moment he'd been waiting years for. Clarion had left his dad living with cancer in squalor. He had called, he had complained, he had named and he had shamed, but he had never heard Clarion's management speak, never seen them questioned about why his estate, his home, had been completely abandoned. How did you feel watching that interview?
I wanted them closed down as a housing provider, and the reason I say that is that excuse. That there was a young girl on the estate with 3 brain tumours having to put her hand down the back of a toilet because her toilet was broken and no one would fix it, or people had mice and rats running riot in their homes, or leaks, or lights filled with water, safety concerns there. Yet they were talking about whether it was financially viable to invest money into making sure people's homes are at a livable standard. At a livable standard. We weren't asking to have a red carpet rolled out in front of us or move into Buckingham Palace. We were asking to live in a home that was at a standard that anyone in Clarion would live in, including those chief executives. Yet they had the audacity, after watching the recording of the conditions we were living in, talking about financial viability and whether or not it was worth spending money on.
Do you feel like that report and that investigation, when it went out, do you think it did make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it did. It changed everything, because we were only seen as little people by the housing provider. We weren't on their level. They didn't need to speak to us. They didn't need to have a conversation. Who are we? But along comes ITV News, and all of a sudden things change. We start to get answers. You saw pest control coming down to the estate, repair vans coming down. They had to replace all the roofs on people's homes because everyone was having leaks, and Janet, right, and the state of her bathroom and kitchen, and nothing was done yet. Along comes ITV News. In the space of a few weeks, she's got a new kitchen and new bathroom because they were telling her she'd have to wait 30 years. That, 3-4 minute report? That changed everything for the estate, and Clarion now were being talked about, and not just by residents on our estate struggling, but people around the country that were struggling under them.
What had come out of Clarion was clear. Confronted with our findings, Europe's biggest social housing provider admitted they had failed. But again, where was the accountability here? How was failure on this scale not being picked up? Who was checking this stuff? Well, that should be the regulator, who were nowhere to be seen until our report came out. And then suddenly, just like Croydon Council before, they launched an investigation. So it all rested on the regulator to decide if Clarion had failed or not. We'd await their findings with interest. But something still wasn't right here. Why did it always take us to expose the problems before anyone took any action? By now, the housing associations responsible for the worst failures knew they were in our sights. Yet 3 months in, we still haven't heard a word from the national body that represents them. The National Housing Federation, in public, has kept completely silent, though we soon learnt privately they were well aware of our work. We received a leaked email from a source which had been sent by the Federation to all its members, Clarion, Bromford, all of them. It read, "As I'm sure you've seen, ITV News are currently running an investigation into damp and mould in homes across the UK. We expect ITV to air more case studies from housing association homes soon, at which point we will respond publicly on behalf of our sector. So that we can monitor the situation closely and provide support to any of our members impacted, please get in touch with our press team if you are approached by ITV." So we contacted the Federation and asked for an interview. They agreed.
You good to go, yeah? Do your name and title, please, Kate.
Yeah, I'm Kate Henderson. I'm the Chief Executive of the National Housing Federation.
And so I get to sit down with Kate Henderson, who sounds apologetic.
Your investigation has revealed stories that are just completely unacceptable, and I want to say sorry to those residents Levels of damp and mould in housing association homes are around 5%. That's better than other types of property, but we know we need to do more.
But it soon becomes clear that this is a body not holding housing associations to account, but defending them and their interests. If only tenants had someone fighting this hard for them.
So looking at data, almost 9 in 10 residents say that they are satisfied overall with their housing association, and 9 in 10 residents say they're satisfied with a repair.
The problem here is that you say, oh, well, we look at data and we look at this and it's 9 out of 10. But it's hard to trust you when you say that, when you speak to tenants and they say, well, we can't even get them to pick up the phone to respond to a complaint.
And this is the pattern of our conversation. The head of the National Housing Federation quotes statistics showing the vast majority of associations are doing a great job. She had promised in her email to the housing associations to defend them, and so she did. And so it was a case of sorry, but.
Sorry seems to be the easiest word when it comes to housing associations when we approach them. But why does it take us, our intervention, from the outside for you to do something about this?
Last year, housing associations invested £5.7 billion in repairs and maintenance. We're absolutely committed to providing good quality services.
But that commitment did not extend to launching an investigation or an internal inquiry into what we'd discovered. The organisation was confident we'd found a few bad eggs and nothing more. Off camera, as we packed our equipment away, the questions were, how long will you carry on this investigation, do you think? And have you thought about looking at the private sector? I came away thinking the message was, you've had your fun, now go off and catch the real criminals. This was a sector not used to scrutiny. We are social housing, we're the good guys. I felt they were in denial. They were sorry, but. 2 months later, and I'm in Birmingham, filming on a housing estate.
We have buildings that we maintain that are over 100 years old. It's old stock, it's old pipes that are leaking, just the lack of money that's been put into it.
It's for a special documentary ITV had commissioned on our investigation. We had by now exposed the worst culprits, or so we thought. So what would be the repercussions? It was here, in Birmingham, that I got my answer when an email dropped in my inbox. After our expose at the Eastfields estate and Quajo's shaming social media campaign, the independent regulator had finally delivered its report into Clarion, ruling, our investigation did not find evidence of systemic or organisational failure, which indicates a breach of the consumer standards. Europe's biggest provider, who had ignored residents for years, left rats to run through houses and leaks to spread uncontrollably, bringing ceilings crashing down across an estate of 500 homes, have been completely cleared, which means no punishment. I cannot believe what I'm reading. I'm not even angry, I just don't get it. Above everything else, the journalist instincts kick in. I just want to know how. Why? Next time on The Trapped, a showdown with a housing secretary.
For every 175 families that need a home, you built them one. No, that is an abject failure.
That's not correct.
That is correct.
Just when we think it couldn't get any worse, it is the most disgusting thing I've ever witnessed. I knew the flat was bad. I still wasn't expecting that email. I wasn't expecting that to be the result. And the racism faced by social housing tenants.
We had a large number of African residents and we had a big meeting with them. They were unhappy. And then when they were finished, all the managers were sitting around saying, what are they complaining about? They've just come from huts.
If you want to see any of the visuals from this series, head to thetrapped.co.uk or follow the link in the show notes. If you are in bad housing or your living situation is under threat, you'll also find a full list of people to contact to get help. The Trapped is presented by me, Daniel Hewitt, alongside Imogen. It's written by myself and David Williams, with archiving by Alpha Ceesay and Lauren Aarons. Audio production and sound design is by Meic, Parry and Jack Soper. The series is produced and directed by David Williams. The executive producers are Matt Williams and Ed Saunt.